Today, I want to talk about Theodore Lawson's A Brief and True Narrative and how it relates to today's world events. So we're going to start with supernatural evidence and modern misinformation. In the original document with Theodore Lawson, there's a couple of evidences that are extremely prevalent and provable by an eyewitness, which includes a yellow bird supposedly sucking between a witch's fingers, claims that a person's mere glass could cause torment and anguish and pain, and bite marks and physical symbols that weren't present before but all of a sudden were because of a witch. And this can parallel in 2025 with constant conspiracy theories and pseudoscientific claims where unverifiable hidden evidence is presented as truth. Personal testimony is elevated over actual investigation, and physical symptoms are interpreted as proof of complex conspiracies. The thing that immediately pops to mind for me would be the vaccine scandals, where all of a sudden, 2020, vaccines were made political. The side was trying to poison you, it was going to make it worse, it was going to provide permanent damage to your body. And none of this has been proven true, yet people still take it as fact because of these symptoms that people all of a sudden got, which aren't actual symptoms, but a condition called it's a condition relating to hysteria, where people hear about this stuff and then it starts happening to them, even though it's not actually supposed to happen to them. It's like a placebo, but it's a negative placebo, not a positive placebo. And you can see that with this piece. And we also have the role of young people accusing, right? We have girls like Abigail Williams, who was 12 years old, having dramatic public fits, their testimony being unquestionable because they're so young, and seeing supernatural beings in events. Well, there aren't actively children like this today. We can see this with social media, with young teens being able to quickly spread unverified things that they themselves didn't verify, but are still being presented as facts. You see this with Tumblr and Reddit, where sites like r/teenagers is used to spread things that aren't exactly true, or were already misinformed as is, and just gets worse as you hear it second, third, fourth, fifth hand. And it becomes a big problem, especially when digital platforms allow for dramatic, uncontested narratives with things like blocking and preventing people from actually seeing or commenting. It makes it seem one-sided, which is a problem because there's a lot more than one side in today's political society. And then social issues are reduced to simple, emotionally charged statements. This becomes a problem with things like Black Lives Matter, but then somebody says all lives matter, but all lives matter was created to be a bad thing. It was created to be a contrast to Black Lives Matter, because now there's different, like, trying not to be racist or sexist here, but it becomes a problem with social issues just becoming a statement instead of a thing. It's the same thing that you could see with wars, where we just get a number. This many people died. How did these people die? What happened here? What's going on? But all we get is this many people died. This happened. Where's the other information? And then we have the institutions validating extraordinary claims. This document shows magistrates and ministers, high respected officials, accepting these supernatural, unprovable testimonies, imprisoning people with their religious power, and treating religious and legal authority as synonymous, which is a problem because religion is inherently flawed in the way that it treats people outside of said religion. You can see this especially with Christianity, where a lot of times Christians only trust other Christians, and it becomes a problem in that, where it's extremely hard to convince somebody otherwise. And then you can see this in 2025 once again with political discourse, medical misinformation, technology, moral panics, and social media content moderation. A political discourse that just immediately goes off of, well, you did this, we did this, you did this, we did this. We can see this in, for example, a Twitter thread I was reading the other day. I'll see if I can put it up here. I don't know if I will be able to. Where this guy is talking about how the current political powers, being conservative, are actively breaking multiple laws. But then the next comment down is from a Twitter user who's obviously a conservative, stating that, well, you did it, so now it's time for you to sit down and take your turn. Again, I'll see if I can get it to pop up here. I don't know if I'll be able to. But you can see this where people just yell at each other. It don't make sense, because even if the Democrats did break the law, what gives you the right to then break the law in return to set things back to the right stance when you're going so much farther than that said right stance? And it then becomes more of a political discourse issue where people just take these one-liners and run with them instead of actually conversing about these issues. Medical misinformation, once again, with the vaccines, technology, moral panics, and that goes with AI, where people believe that AI is going to be able to completely replace all artists and all writers and all teachers and everything else, where that's what should not happen. But it's almost impossible for that to happen, because we've seen AI take shortcuts. It doesn't actually write about stuff. It doesn't actually know what it's talking about. It's just regurgitating information, and it can easily be misinformed or lie, which you can see if you ask it to generate a paper. It'll start making up sources and make up as much as it can to reach its limit, which is one, a problem, but two, a very great way to see how this kind of just becomes more of an issue than it already was. And social media content moderation, again, is just blocking, canceling, kicking, removing. You can see that with the X or Twitter or whatever you call it now, where if you are on one side, you're on the other, and then you get blocked, which is why Blue Sky all of a sudden is making a huge comeback with thousands of millions of people flocking to that because they're not getting removed for saying the statements. You can also see the same thing in Reddit and other sites, especially both right and left-wing sites and political sites, where moderators go a bit too far in moderation. And then we get to ritual conspiracy theories like the red bread sacrament from Mercy Lewis's specific claim about red bread that looked like man's flesh, a red drink which most likely is blood, or, well, was seen as blood, but it's most likely a wine, and a ritualistic gathering of groups of people. And this goes with conspiracy theories about the secret gatherings of powerful groups and elaborate, impossible to verify claims about elite conspiracies. See stuff like the Illuminati or Elon Musk being the president and stuff like that. It becomes like all of these people converging to make this one person a figurehead. You can see it with Biden and Harris too. Everybody was thinking Biden was just being fed information, was being fed, told what to do, and was getting stuff beforehand, which even if that was being claimed, that's not a conspiracy, that's politics. But these surface, they're impossible to verify, impossible to actually see if you can get it correct, and it becomes more of a problem than it already was, than it should have been in the first place, because it just becomes more of a conspiracy. And then we have the performance of suffering. It describes, this document describes about afflicted persons predicting each other's fits and curing each other with a touch, and creating elaborate narratives about their pain, about seeing specters and marks and familiars and all of this. And it becomes, the trials became a performance. It became acting. Everybody had a part to play to get this person killed, to get their money, their land, their power, or just because you didn't like them. And it worked. Even if it was only about a 10% death rate from these trials, it worked. These people were untrusted, and even if they weren't executed, people never saw them the same way. They lost access to what made them human, which was social interaction. And you can see this with social media, performative drama. See TikToks like Ticks and Roses, where this lady actively fakes ticks for years and amasses a following and uses it to make money, and it becomes more of a performance, actually alienating those with Tourette's syndrome, which is what she was faking. And it becomes a problem because now we don't know who to believe. Viral mental health narratives, again, sites like, TikTokers like Ticks and Roses, online communities reinforcing collective emotional experiences, all working together and creating these things that basically become, what would you call it, like a collection of people of one group, think tanks. I don't think that's correct, but it's just a group of people conversing and not having any outside discourse because they all agree with each other, and that's a problem. We don't want everybody to agree with each other because then there's no room for arguments and talking and persuading and a lot of other things. And then we have supernatural threats. There was, in the Theodore Lawson's A Brief and True Narrative, a black man who was representing a supernatural evil, whispering secrets, offering Histeria books, and representing an unseen threat. He wasn't called the black man because his skin color was black, but because he was clothed in all black, he looked like a devil. You can see this, a good depiction of this in 2016's The Witch, with this character that was actually a goat, but didn't rage, and you see this guy in all black clothing having this book and offering it for her to sign to become a witch. And it represents an unseen threat. There's something that we are not seeing here. There's something that is being held. But this becomes with racialized fear narratives, because obviously black men, if somebody heard that out of context, would immediately go, oh, that's a black person. And that becomes more of a fear narrative, with people being unable to discuss or trust this thing they're creating a fear narrative over, which you can see with the Palestinian and Israelite conflicts, where people are making narratives about this group of people to make it worse. You can see this with the immigration problem we're having right now. Other countries are releasing warnings about the U.S.'s situation right now and telling people that if you go there, you're going there at your own risk, and you might be detained without knowing why. And it becomes more of a dehumanization of the other people, the people, nationalism, the people not in our country are other, they're weird, and it becomes anxiety for some people, where they're imagining these threats, they're imagining these things, and it's becoming more of an issue than it already was, which half the time isn't actually an issue. And then it goes into deeper psychological mechanism, where fear is one person, or how fear works in a public space, where one person's claim triggering another person's claim, triggering another person, creating a cascading effect that can, cause destruction and biases and narratives to form about somebody that's completely wrong. And it's contagion, it's an emotional contagion that spreads faster than rational thoughts, and it allows these people to actually get together because they have a shared head, they have a shared problem, and it becomes constantly, like in 2025 with mechanisms, particularly in political polarization, where now, with like 30, 40 years ago, there wasn't really a right and left being shoved on the people. Like, some people didn't even know about it and would just vote based on what they thought, but now it's, you're either with us or against us, you're either a righty or a lefty, and it becomes a problem because it causes harm to people that have other things, and it becomes an echo chamber, and echo chambers need to be avoided. This narrative isn't just history, it's also a stark reminder of how psychology remains fundamentally unchanged, particularly human. Mechanisms of fear, belief, and collective hysteria continue to shape our social landscape, and it's now amplified by technology and global communication.